All right. Happy Tuesday, everyone. And we are back again with another Learning Tech Talks where I still got to come up with a better intro because we're not just exploring the landscape of learning tech, because we're really exploring all things learning. I mean, I don't know. We'll see where we go with that. But I'm joined by celebrity guest Matthew Daniel from Guild Education, who is, people are dying just for this based on the comments and messages I've gotten. So I don't know, Matthew. You might have to be a recurring. It is true.
No,
you think I'm making this up?
Look, I spent some time with my family at home this weekend. Nobody there thinks I'm all that popular, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, now you're here where that is not the case. And you know what? Your kids do feel that way. You're their superhero, as are all the people who are going to be watching and listening. And I will tell you right now, I'm sure the guests will be very thankful that we've solved the echo issue that poor JD had to deal with me. You know, I will say I did like sounding like I was the announcer at a WWF, ladies and gentlemen. That was actually pretty cool, but I guess it wasn't great from a listening standpoint. So apologies in advance. So anyway, Matthew and I, we're going to be chatting about a lot of different things related to skill development, the equitable position that companies are in right now. How are we creating greater equity in the system? How are we touching frontline workers in a meaningful way? But we're going to do all that, and we're going to talk about Guild a little bit, because what was interesting is before we went live, we said, well, what is one misconception that we really want to bust? And it was, well, do people really know what Guild education is? Like, could they articulate it in a sentence if somebody did that? And we said, you know what? That might be an opportunity that we can solve for. But before we do that, we're going to get to know Matthew a little bit more here. So I've got the first question, which is easy. Everybody watching, you can play along as well. But Matthew, where are you in the world right now?
I am in Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. All right. Well, and that's good because you've been in Nashville for quite a while now, right? I mean, even when we first met, you were there.
Yeah, we've been here for almost 16 years. Yeah. So I grew up in Arkansas, but have been in Nashville for 16 years. And that makes you a Nashvilleian around here. If you've been here that long, you're an OG. Yeah.
You're a celebrity and an OG. You got all sorts of things associated with you that I am very jealous. I don't have any of those. Okay, so that's where you are. So I'm always in the same place. People think I don't actually even ever get out of this chair, the comments I get sometimes. But so let me ask you this. The other question I have that's kind of an interesting one. I am curious, is there anything, as you look at 2022 so far, I can't believe it's April, but it's April 2022. The year's almost, it's a quarter over as of this week, which is weird to think. But is there anything so far that you went, I did not expect that?
Oh, well, I'm seeing the question. So what surprised you about the state of work? I think the whole, I don't know. It feels like everything outside of work is where the surprises are, right? There's a war raging in Europe at the moment. So yeah, that's not expected this year. So I think there's a lot more happening around us than there is. I think all the pressures with people working remote and distributed, those things have been there expected. And so I think they're coming alive in the way that we expected those to start to happen. I think the Cornerstone acquisition kind
of expected, but it was a little like, whoa, didn't fully expect that one.
Yeah, so I think there's some interesting stuff going on, but nothing that's really surprised me about work this year. I just know this: it is really good to be back with other humans. I am doing some travel and have done that. We're doing an all company get together. We have really thoughtful protocols about how folks gather together, and Guilders are getting together in a couple weeks in Denver, and I am ecstatic to actually get face to face with hundreds of people I've been working with for a while now and haven't got to meet in person. So that is fun. So that's what I got for you, Chris.
All right. Okay. Well, I have a question from one of the guests, and then we'll make this one quick, because the one thing I will say is, similar to you, there wasn't anything in particular, like specifically, that jumped out that I went mind blown. Like, did not see that coming, would have never guessed in 100 years, this type of thing. But I do think, yeah, the specific activities of it, sometimes you're like, oh, that was interesting in terms of the timing. Wouldn't have expected it to play out quite like that. Like some of the moves with return to work, where I've been like, didn't expect that company to take that position on it on both sides. Some that are like, we're 100% back. And you're like, really? I wouldn't have expected that. And other ones that are like, they're never gonna, and we're going full remote. And you're like, oh,
right.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is odd. Okay. Whatever.
I spent years in financial services, and I've been surprised how many of those organizations have been really comfortable going all remote or nearly all remote. I think you have your stalwarts, who have said, no, we're getting back in the office, and they've tried now 6 times to do it unsuccessfully. But I think the others who have just fully embraced it have been really interesting to me in FinServ.
I agree. That's where some of these like again, we won't talk at length about the CSOD thing, but I think that was one of those, anybody in the industry has known there's going to be some consolidation and this and that. But when you heard those 2 names, you kind of went, okay. Didn't necessarily think that was going to happen. So the other 2, and I told you have celebrity fans here. Like Michael's over here. He's like, can't wait to catch up.
Slapikas!
I told you, you thought, oh no, you're just lying to me. I'm like, no, not true. And then the other question was, have you ever bumped into, because Ethan's in the Kentucky area. All right. See?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the folks at Watershed that come, lots of those folks come out of that team.
They do.
So yeah, but also I think back in the day where we used to have a lot of in-person conferences, I would be on the same flights coming into and out of Nashville as both Watershed team, the Rusticy team, a couple of other folks. There were it's one of the folks that have been acquired by another company that came out of it. They were based here. So I think the UL Labs folks that have done a whole lot of training, they're based here in Nashville. You run into Dollar General. You run into all the Nashville
all
folks.
of them. It's one of those, everybody I know.
Amazon.
Okay. Yeah. Really? Okay. Amazon. Well, see, I do feel like there are some of those communities where it's a small enough community where you do just end up bumping into folks. You're like, oh yeah, I know the folks. Anyway, we won't do this because this is like the old guy thing where you're sitting on the patio talking about these things that everybody listening is going like, I asked a simple question. It was a yes or no question. So anyway, let's shift gears with this because you didn't join originally with Guild. You joined with
Entangled.
I remember because you were advising, and then I remember we talked when you got the thing and you went, I was doing this. I'm now going back to Entangled, and then it became Guild. So what's that journey been like?
Yeah. So I consider myself a learning guy through and through, and have been for a really long time. I had been consulting on my own, and it was great. It was really good. And then this guy, his name's Paul Freeman, called me out of Entangled Solutions. And he said, listen, we're doing this thing. We got venture labs on one side. We're building new products in the learning and ed tech space. And we do consulting on the other side. Come join as a partner and let's do this. He didn't have much in the corporate learning space, was really strong in K-12 higher ed, philanthropic efforts around kind of the learning ecosystem, but not corporate L&D. And he sucked me in, and I said, sure, let's do this. And so I had joined.
I remember, wasn't like one of the things that hooked you, and not that this was the thing that hooked you, but something that you were like, excuse me, was like, you'll never have to make another PowerPoint deck again.
I told you that story.
I remember you telling me that you were like, wait a minute.
We're talking about it, and he's like, we're doing this thing and this big global vision and things that really should have gotten me more excited. And I was like, yeah, I got it. And he's like, it's good work. And I'm like, I got good work over here on my own. I'm doing things I enjoy. Thanks so much. And he said, if he's listening, you're a liar. But he said, Matthew, you'll never have to build your own deck again. And I swear to you, I just went, oh, say more about that.
Hold on.
Let's talk more.
As Matthew, I just remember you telling me the story. I just visualized you shoving everything off your desk and going, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Yeah. That
Oh,
is not true, by the way.
no,
That
it
is
is not,
definitely not
right?
true.
Anybody listening, we just totally made this story up right now. Um,
Yeah. And so I joined Entangled in February. We were acquired in May by Guild Education, and that was definitely a journey because I think if you imagine Guild as a company that has focused primarily on higher ed, as a as kind of a contemporary L&D person, you're thinking a lot more about real-time performance interventions, and you're thinking about learning interventions that are going to create impact this quarter. And so higher ed has this much longer
yeah,
point of view. They're thinking further in the distance. And I pouted, like, if I'm fully honest, from probably May till July, I was going through some serious who moved my cheese kind of moments about what am I doing here and how am I going to add value and what is it. And I actually got a chance to talk with our CEO, Rachel. She said, I'm struggling with the idea of, I hear us talk about education and what we're
yep,
offering to employers and this idea of where you want to go with upskilling and reskilling, having a hard time seeing it. And
yep.
and she did what any good leader does. She invited me to help build it, right? She didn't
Okay,
challenge me on the
yeah,
merits of it. She said, if you don't think it's what you want, help us build what you think it can
what you
be.
think it should be.
And yeah, it really was a pivot moment for me that I went all in on Guild and what we're doing, and have gotten to watch some pretty cool impacts since I've been there. And we could talk about that later. But yeah,
Okay.
that whole transition for myself, which was, I would describe it as going from like super learning and performance focused to talent development focused. That's the frame I would use, which was this longer term horizon, having short term impacts, but this much longer time horizon. It really took
Yeah.
me a minute to make that transition in my head.
Well, and we'll talk the next phase in this conversation, which we will never get done in an hour. I have no doubt on that one, but is to talk more about Guild. But I think that point that you brought up is an important one for folks to keep in the back of their minds, because when you think about learning, and I think there's a couple catalysts to this, but this whole shift towards performance, and it's like it only matters to give people what they need when they need it, and that's it, and real time perform. Look, I am all on board with a lot of the effort that is happening
Yeah.
in that department. And I think
Yeah.
it's really, really, really valuable. It's really meaningful. In fact, a big part of my core strategy right now is how do we do anti-learning? How do we remove anti-learning, or how do we remove learning and really focus on just what people need? And it's not all that. And I think
That's right.
that's one of the trends that I see happening where I'm like, don't lose sight. There is the short game and it is important, but don't
Yeah.
forget the long game, because
That's right.
you're going to
You
put
know,
yourself in this position where you can't maintain things.
the way I think about this one, Christopher, is um, I think a lot about the experiences that we've had over the past 2 years with the supply chain, right? Running out of
Yep.
toilet paper, running out of paper towels, didn't have produce, didn't have, like, there was a moment. And when you read the articles about our supply chain, what you kept hearing is, we have run such a lean supply chain that we have moved all of the resources really close to where they're needed. And nobody wants to keep a whole bunch of what's the word I'm looking for? Inventory on their shelves that they
Nobody
have
wants to
against their
hold
books.
inventory. It's
That's
like we
right.
just only
And
what we
it
need
turns
when we need
out,
it.
when it turns out, when there's a shock to the system, anything that upsets that system, I mean, we're 2 years out and we're still struggling to get right with the supply chain. And it looks like we're still going to struggle over the next year.
Yeah.
Given everything, I mean, you've got now a war going on top of that, but you just have a lot of supply chain issues that are not expected. Talent, we have thought about talent in a really similar way, which is just keep the skills that you need for today really close to the work, rather than
Yep.
thinking about this really long game of, do I have the right skills built out for a long term? And so we've kind of stripped all of the margin out of the system, and that really started in the late 90s and came to a head, I think, around the recession, where everybody was like, we got to get rid of any
We got to get lean.
talent.
Only need
That's
what
right.
we need, and we'll buy it if we absolutely need it. But other than that, we're only going to focus on that. And we were a little lagged on
here,
that. We were
and
behind
here
it.
we are, 2022, and nobody can get enough software engineers or data scientists. Nobody has enough supply chain folks. We're struggling in so many different areas. And it's not just the places where we've evolved quickly, though like data science is a great example of that. There are also places like supply chain that existed for a long time. And logistics, CDLs, that's not a new role. RNs, not a new role. But we didn't build the surplus into the system that we needed of talent. And as a result, with a shock to the system and some changes, the whole system is on the verge of shutting down your local restaurant because there's not enough talent.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think sometimes this conversation revolves around, oh, software engineers, some of these big roles, and you're like, frontline workers. Or I just read an article yesterday about businesses just shutting up their doors because they're like, we literally can't find people with the skills to do even just some of the most fundamental tasks of our business. Yeah. And again, the thing with it, and this kind of ties to this other piece, is you don't build skills through a job aid. And I think that's where the supply chain thing, the shock to the system blew things up, because you can't digital adoption, job aid, performance support, social learning your way through big skill gaps. You can't just go, just like pair them up with somebody and like, I don't know, next week, there'll be like a level 3 software engineer. Nope. Right. You got a long runway on that.
Yeah. I was reading an article yesterday, again, going back to the conflict in Ukraine. And they were talking about the Russian soldiers that were being lost, who they were fighter jets. And they said the average cost for training for those people to be in their roles is $7 million. This is what I was reading in the article yesterday. So I think that is an extreme case, of course, but it's the concept that you're building equity, right? It's like an investment. The way that I talk about it is, I've got a 401k, you've got a 401k. Most of the people who are listening to this, we're often in white collar jobs. We have access and privilege to have things like 401k. So we have this, and we make these small investments over time that incrementally get bigger and bigger and bigger. Talent works the same way. We don't want to think of it that way, but ultimately, if what we're doing is performance, which is, do the thing in front of you right now, that's really important to keep the business functioning today.
Yes, you can't ignore it and go, that doesn't matter. All we're doing is the other end. And that's the problem we've had to overcome.
We've got to build this long-term software. You don't get to software engineer 4 overnight. You don't get to data analyst 5 overnight. And everybody's looking for the same talent. So where are you going to find those folks? I think we are finding, and you mentioned frontline, we focus highly on frontline. We support learning and talent development for all roles. We support upskilling and reskilling through the whole organization. The Guild is hyper-focused as an organization on the frontline. That's why we have those partners like Walmart, Chipotle, Target, Discover Finance, some of those companies that we work with that are really focused on their frontline organization being skilled, reskilled, upskilled for other jobs in their organization and building their own talent internally. There is a unique set of needs that those audiences have. And I would argue that in many of our organizations, and I've been in the role before, I'm not just some outside consultant or working at a vendor. I was in-house for 6 years at Capital One. Through our digital transformation. And I made decisions about who got access to what in the learning management system, or who was getting access to the LXP, or who was getting
programs,
access to
what people are involved in what programs.
And that's right. Yep. I was making decisions about that. And what I was doing is I was making those decisions in a cost-conscious way, as we have to do, right? We got budgets, we've got to come to them. But the way that we often handle that is, well, you 10,000 folks, Capital One and tens of thousands, you 10,000 folks get access to LinkedIn Learning. You don't, right? And so you end up segmenting by population, by job code, by all those things. Would you mind flipping up? There was a slide that we were looking at earlier.
You didn't do the secret wink. No, there it is. Now you're in stream.
This is a data point our teams put together, and this is where I think there is a problematic lack of data being gathered on issues around race in our own field, or on socioeconomic impact of what we do in our field. And so I couldn't go to many of the, I won't name names, but I tried going to those publications and pulling from state of the industry reports and those type of things and couldn't get to it. So we actually had to use some data out of Georgetown. And we said, we did an approximation. I think when we start talking about the front line, this is a data point I missed, which is if you talk about the front line is made up of folks who come from underrepresented populations as a whole. And I'm not just talking about race and demographics, I'm talking about underrepresented on a number of
socioeconomic. I mean, it's a complicated mix.
Yeah. And so what we found, we just wanted to do a calculation of like who is getting access to what learning opportunities,
to the dollars.
How are we spending our dollars in learning and talent development? So there's a whole series of calculations behind that. You can see the source at the bottom of the screen, but ultimately what it came down to is that for every dollar we spend on training for white employees, we were looking at about 81 cents on Black employees and 68 cents on Hispanic and Latino employees. I would say to you, this is directional data. Like I can tell you how to calculate it the way that we did this data. If you look at it, is sourced in like 2015, 2016. But ultimately what we found directionally is that you're seeing a vast amount of underspending on populations. And the way those decisions get made aren't let's limit access for Black folks or for our Latinx populations, but those decisions are let's segment access to learning opportunities or stretch opportunities or gigs or whatever it is that you're using. And we tend to limit those by populations, and the populations who don't get access to those kind of platforms and opportunities are the folks who are coming from underrepresented populations anyway. So I think it's been fascinating for me. The more time I've been at Guild thinking about matters of equity, thinking about the front line, the more time I have started reflecting on the decisions that I've made in the organization and the way that those are impacting real time the lives of people across organizations.
Well, and what's interesting about this point that I think is really valuable that you brought out of that, and then I have a follow-up question just about Guild, but is to your point with this, a lot of the decisions, like you said, aren't being made with the intentional, okay, and this is how we're thinking about this decision. But I think this awareness too, do you realize the decision you're making and the way you're segmenting has this butterfly effect?
That's right.
And it goes back to what we talked about with the 401k, where it goes back to, okay, you're not now making, it may seem like this nominal investment, but you realize that nominal investment over time actually is having a catastrophic effect on certain segments of your employee population, which is translating to your diversity stats that you're going, well, how do we balance this? And you're going, well, okay, see, that's like saying I haven't invested in my 401k my entire life and I want to retire next year. How do we do it? And you're like, well, my best advice is you shouldn't have waited till the year before retirement to start investing in your 401k.
That's right.
But that awareness that this trickle-down effect can actually be a really important reflection point as you're having those conversations.
Yeah, I think in general, they're just like small policy decisions. Let me do this for a second. If you don't know what Guild is, let me just start here for just one moment and tell you about.
Well, that's where I was going to go. What is Guild when people say, Matthew, what are they? Are they a tech company? They say reskilling. They say frontline a lot. Like, what is it?
Yeah, and I wanted to go into a really specific example, and I realized if I went into it, I maybe hadn't connected the dots yet. So Guild, SaaS platform, as well as services wrapped around that. So here's what it is. It is sorry, that's me doing the bottom line thing. Let me give the broader language.
100,000 footed for us, and then we'll go down.
Guild is a platform that is designed to give opportunities to folks on the front line to reskill and upskill into new fields. And so the way that we do that is we have a learning marketplace, and it is loaded with content that is specific to the needs of an employer.
So to this, and I'm going to kind of like replay it back to you to how I'm hearing it, and then you correct me along the way. So it's both the technology, the platform, and the services to help create opportunity. And it goes back to this slide that you shared, which says just to help you balance this equation so that this isn't out of whack for your company. Is that at least where we are
it's
right
got
now, a
matters
fair
of
point?
equity. Yeah, it's got matters of equity, but I would even go further than that, which
Okay.
is that so let me explain. There are four key parts to the business that we
Okay.
have. Number one, it's a learning marketplace, and this is a
Okay.
place where we have academic and learning partners who have deep programs. I'm not talking about you can comb through this program in 4 hours. I'm talking about let's spend a couple months
Okay.
building new skills for the future, and those programs range from data analysis to data science to software engineering to CDL to RN to
Okay.
BSN, like lots of different programs.
So you're curating these things that are designed to build deep skills in an organization.
My team, we go to a particular employer and we say, all right, we looked at the economic data based on where you are in geography. Here's where you're going to have a hard time finding talent in the future. So you've got this professional services aspect where we're looking at the needs of the organization, the economic modeling for it, the hiring trends over that organization. We say, of all the thousands of programs we have available in our catalog, here are the 75, here are the 100, here are the 150 that are really right for you.
Yeah.
Some of those are
so people know where to start, because realistically,
right.
I would say a lot of orgs are like, we got a problem. We know.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue where to get started.
Let's go buy a library of 1,000.
Right. Let's go buy a library. That should fix it. No.
Which it doesn't, right? And so what we say is let's curate this learning marketplace to the things that align to your corporate strategy. So we've got the learning marketplace, we've got the professional services that help you define what goes in the learning marketplace and support you along the way. Number three, we have the payments infrastructure behind that. So if you imagine you've got a lot of different learning partners that may be at the table. You got Southern New Hampshire University, you've got Thinkful, you've got all these different, you've got Penn Foster High School, because we're at frontline employees who didn't finish high school yet. So we've got a whole range of programs that are involved in there, and we handle all of the infrastructure of payments. We serve as the way that gets done. So we've got the platform for the learner.
Which, can I just say on that one, I was just in a conversation yesterday about this. I don't think people realize the complexity that goes into that and how much of this stuff doesn't, like, people don't realize you just even in general have a conversation with a group of senior leaders and say, how does development work in your org? Well, I put it on the P card. Well, I go to this vendor and purchasing's tearing out their hair. Yeah. They're trying to figure out, well, okay, you have a bunch of P card expenses that just say training and development, and everybody's like, I don't know what that. I mean, this is significant. That's so right. You mentioned it, but I want to kind of emphasize that there is a complexity to that a lot of people don't realize exists.
Right. We're building that infrastructure for all those places so that you can get access to Guild. We don't develop content at Guild. We are the marketplace where all of that great content, the best that we curate, we look at the providers. Hey, we're talking about adult working learners. Our average learner, over 50% of our learners are over the age of 30. We're not talking to 18 to 22-year-olds. So we don't need to go down the street to your local state university unless they're really good at servicing adult working learners. We're finding the ones that are good fit. Okay, so that's three things. We got the payments platform, payments and infrastructure. We got the learning marketplace. We've got the professional services around it. And then finally, for me, the part that has gotten me most excited is we have coaches, like literal coaches. So it's not just that I'm going to some AI recommendation engine that says, what course should I take? I mean, we're talking about making really deep investments of your time and the company's money into education programs. Like, are those things that are going to help you get a job when it's all said and done? Are they going to help you stay in the company that you're in? What are your goals? How much time do you have to offer to this? Where did you start? Where should you go? Is this short form? Is it long form? How can we we have partnerships with employers where we have already converted their existing onboarding or their cake decorating training into college credits. So those learners, when they call into us, they walk in with 6, 9, 12 college credits. They knock out a semester of school for what they're going to need in the future. So anyhow, so that coach group is at the beginning of that process, helping them figure out which program they go in the middle of the learning program, and they're just saying, hey, how's time management? How's it going with your family? They're really helping them be successful in their programs. And so our graduation rate is double our competitors. as a result of that, because we're not just showing up and saying register, we're showing up and saying, how's it going? How can we help? And the final
yeah, you're not an admissions counselor that's goal is just to get as many enrollments into a program as possible. It's outcomes focused.
That's right. Our whole model, we're B Corp. So our entire model is based on the success of the student. We don't get paid unless the student is successful, right? So we have a deep incentive to make sure that our learners are successful in the programs that they land in. And then finally, the last kind of coach in that fourth bucket is career coaches, where we're actually talking with these folks and we said, we helped you reskill. You were in a warehouse. Yeah.
Now
you were in a warehouse, you went into a data science program. How do we help you get your resume ready? Like we shouldn't penalize frontline employees for wanting to seek new opportunities in the organization. They haven't interviewed in years. They haven't gone, we're switching from blue collar workers to white collar workers, and the expectation of the hiring managers is vastly different. So like, let's help folks get ready with their resumes and ready to interview and help them start to develop the occupational identity they need for the future. So all right, so that is Guild as a whole.
You forgot the fifth leg of the stool, which is Matthew Daniel, right? Like that's right there. You know, celebrity L&D star Matthew.
I wish that were true.
No, but
that is not
but
true.
on that last piece with the coaching piece, and again, I think the coaching makes sense, and we're seeing in the industry coaching blow up left and right, and I think it again goes back to this piece where, you know, Michael brought this up, but it adds this human element of we have made a lot of assumptions about what people know. And going back to your slide about kind of the inequity in the system, we make our assumptions based on a certain percentage of the population, even things like, oh yeah, everybody knows how to make a really good resume. Everybody knows how to prepare for this kind of stuff. Everybody knows how to do these things. And we go, but they don't. Not everybody does. And then it doesn't work and they don't know where to go. And now you just continue perpetuating a problem that you can't do now that you can't solve if you don't fix some of these things. So the other question I have for you though is, with this is not an overnight change. So this is, and I think this goes back to one of my follow-up questions with you, which maybe your secret wink slide that I think I see queued up goes into the complexity of reskilling, which when you're asking companies to do this isn't a sign on the dotted line and in 3 months we'll come back to you and we've solved your 401k is ready for retirement next year. This is an investment in your people and the org. This is
developing a pipeline, right? This is thinking long-term. So before we go to the slide, I just want to go back. Part of the reason that so many employers are working with us, I mean, just this year, Hilton, I'm trying to see the ones that have been announced publicly. Hilton,
I don't want to put you in any bad position where you say something.
I mean, did you see Dolly? Did you see Dolly's talking about Guild? Come on now. I could not. When my 4-year-old is excited, we do all the imagination station in our house, the books, and at the end, Ellie, my 4-year-old, she gets to the end, and there's a picture of Dolly at the back cover, and she just kisses. She's good night, Dolly. So when I told my 4-year-old that Dolly was talking about Daddy's work, that is the moment I did get just
you are a superhero
in my own house. Yeah,
I know. I told you.
So the reason so many of these companies are working with us is, yes, the outcome. We are building a talent pipeline for 9 months from now, a year from now, 2 years, 4 years from now. But also in the meantime, this is a population that is high turnover. And what happens when you're in these programs is that you stay in the job that you had. Like you don't just leave. Now you've got a reason. And this isn't because of policies. We really discourage our employers. There's this kind of standard when you start working with formal education that is a clawback.
Golden handcuffs, clawbacks, all these things that are like, we'll do this for you. But if you do anything, we're going to take it all back.
Well, guess what happens when you do that, right? When you say
Not
things
good
like
things.
reimburse, that's right. We say things like, we'll pay for it. The company says, we'll pay for it, but you have to reimburse us at the end. Take out a loan. If you've got $400 in your checking account and you've been told you better pay back at the end, and you don't know if you're getting laid off or what's happening in your world, or is your car going to work next week? Are you going to apply? Are you going to
No, you're not.
school? Like
No,
you're
you're
not
not.
pursuing that stuff. So the moment that you start to peel back some of these policies, which in and of themselves are discriminatory, not intentionally, but they
They
prevent
are.
certain audiences from going for it. I was trying to look for the data
Well,
here.
but I'm
I
even
had a
just thinking
stat.
of reimbursement policies with some of this stuff where you say, well, if you leave, then you have to pay it back in a lump sum. For people without a disposable income, which a lot of people like don't have enough to pay
That's right.
back a 4-year college degree program in 6 months type of a thing, you throw that layer of threat on top of it. It's like, well, what if even I get a much better opportunity that pays a lot better?
Right.
I'm going to miss opportunity because I know I can't afford to pay back this thing that I lumped myself. So I'm just going to avoid the whole thing.
Yeah, here's the data point. 67% of frontline employees and 47% of overall employees in cite not being able to pay tuition up front as a main reason for not using their education benefits at all. So if you put that payments infrastructure that I was talking about earlier, you start to open doors for audiences who may not have accessed this thing before to come in. And guess what they do? They stay. So to your point about when we say, it's a investment that goes beyond there are certain things that we do in the L&D world that are like strictly L&D, and we're trying to tie it out to retention, but we can't always do that, or
Yep.
talent acquisition. What we have watched is we did a campaign with Chipotle where they just went hard at their debt-free education whenever they went out to advertise, and they saw a 67% bump in applicants because people saw that program. So you got this talent attraction and
You're
acquisition
offering
thing happening.
opportunity.
You're
offering
staying.
opportunity.
That's it. You have this ROI that comes from people staying in the job. Like if they didn't even become talent for you for the future, they actually stay in their job and get better at the one they're in today because they're in it. And then at the other end of it, when they do stay with you for 2 years, for 4 years, and we're watching this again, a Chipotle stat, which is it's like 7x promotion rate of people who are working with Guild, our members versus those who aren't. But we have to have this mix of all kinds of programs. Short form, we start with this high school, we start with college start to get people ready for college. We have to make these stackable things that build credits over time and get people, because ultimately, while we care most in the learning and development field often about the job that you're doing today, folks who have a degree earn 47% more over their lifetime. So like, let's get them the credential for all the learning that they're due and help them open up new doors for themselves, create opportunity for themselves.
Well, and as much as the conversation floats around, oh, well, we're doing away with the degree requirement for, it's like, we're not even close to that. And at the end of the day, there is still a lot of things where it's like, that's just a baseline requirement, even just from a personal bias standpoint, where people will go, it's not a requirement, but it's an unspoken requirement type of a thing. And I think that's where this value of saying, well, if we can get people a degree, a legitimate degree, why on earth would we not do that for their benefit? Like, why would we be like, oh, you're not going to need it, which is really easy to say when you have a bachelor's and a master's degree and are saying, yeah, I don't think other people need it. Well, why did you do it then?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think it is never lost on me how many of the folks on LinkedIn or in the newspaper are writing about degrees shouldn't be required anymore, have a degree from an Ivy. And so like that is just makes me want to curse really hard at folks. If I'm honest, I do. I yell at my screen all the time for people who say dumb stuff like that. But ultimately, like I get the concept, and
I get what. Yes.
Yeah. And we're working on it, right? I have employers right this minute. I am working with them to help audit their job descriptions, to remove inflated requirements of both experience and degrees so that more of the people coming out of these programs can get access to them. So like that is a real problem. We've got to fix it. We've got to open doors. And also, it's not enough. We got to get people.
So let me ask you this, because I would love your perspective, because I've got my interactions and my experiences, but I always love hearing from others on theirs, because I think sometimes there's this perception that, there's like these curmudgeons in a conference room that are just like, I don't want to do any of this, stuff for anybody. And, I'm fat and happy over here, and bah humbug on, here you go, Tiny Tim. And it's like, well, that my experience has been, that is not what's happening. Yeah. It's not. But these are real struggles where, one, inadvertent decisions are made without understanding the broader implications. Sometimes people just don't know what to do. So there's this analysis paralysis. But these are real challenges for organizations where they go, it's like the person that goes, I really want to get in shape. And it's like, that's where the conversation ends. And you go, well, that's not going to do anything for you. So I'm curious.
I mean, I have been paying for that gym membership for a while.
Eventually, the bill is going to result in some. But I mean, realistically, what do you see helps get the ball rolling on that? Because I feel like, in my experience, once the ball starts rolling, it starts to pick up some steam. But sometimes in those early stages, it's hard to get it rolling, and there are some landmines that can blow people off course pretty quick. So I'm curious what your experience has been in that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of lanes that when we start focusing on these things, they get really excited. The first one is what I just talked about, which is return on investment. I think here's a Matthew Daniel hot take. For those who are learning and development professionals, like, we see this, like, I would say we believe this purpose of, like, people are going to learn more, and then the company's going to make more money that way. And I think if you go to, like, Nick Van Dam's Elevating Learning and Development, his book that he wrote on that, he was a former CLO at McKinsey or others, and you start to look at why is it that we have L&D as a function, or talent development as a function. It is not just performance. It actually is engagement. It's culture in an organization. There are a lot of reasons that they exist. I think practitioners do themselves a great disservice when they show up with executives and they see that the work they do is strictly focused on performance today, because it's so hard to narrow down that performance actually does just come from learning and development. But if you can look at engagement and retention and acquisition through the lens of, if it's got a brand out there in the marketplace and you can see a difference, which is what we see with employers that we work with, then you get money for those things. Like, if you can prove the value, you get money for those kind of efforts. You got to have ROI. Number two, I would say another lane that we hear a lot about is employee experience. Ultimately,
this one's growing big time.
Yeah, Burson just put out another thing this week of, like, employee experience being the center of things. And I gotta tell you, I was looking at one of the best things about being a vendor is you get to see so many different employers and their points of view on everything. You get to take the ideas.
Yeah.
And this is an organization who, like, I know when we implemented Workday back in the day, we imagined that it was, like, going to create a better employee experience. And to a certain degree, it got better. But ultimately, then there's, like, this in the learning space, we're going to put an LXP on top of it because that's going to create a better experience. And now I'm watching, we're going to put a talent marketplace on top of the LXP, on top of the HCM, and we're going to get to this really robust experience. And I would just say, keep going, right? Like, keep trying to make things better.
Don't stop, right? Don't stop.
But none of those things have yet been, they're just more layers. They're not, like, they're actually not being transformational in the employee experience that people think. And so I think we have to look in the aggregate of all the things happening across HR and how different things engage different audiences. Not everybody in the company goes and uses an education benefit, right? We see our numbers of members, and these are people who engage with our platform. It turns out that people retain higher in a company if they just have a conversation with our coach about where they want to go. They may not even enroll in the education, but they get a deeper sense of, I'm making a choice. I have this opportunity. I want to be where I am. It firms up their occupational identity in the job that they have today, not just, how they need to reskill for the future. So anyhow, different audiences, they need health benefits, right? Some folks, look, I'm gonna oversimplify here. There are three things that people in companies want. They want pay. right? And we as a nation have gotten much better at pay over the
We
past
have.
year and a half. We've seen like a 40% jump in wages at the front line, which is better than we've seen in decades. So yay for getting closer to a living wage for folks in the front line. Second, they want purpose. They want to work at employers where they believe that the thing they're doing every day certainly doesn't do bad in the world, but they're hoping that it actually matters to the lives of people.
That it matters.
And if it is doing bad, they're not excited by it anymore. And I think the third thing that people want, and this has been a really interesting data point. I am talking more about this with JD later this week, which is this.
Spoiler alert. I stole
alert.
Matthew right before JD. So JD, I know you're listening to this because you listen to all these. So
they want pathways. 63% of American workers left their jobs last year. That's it.
They want opportunity.
Tell me. This was funny. I wrote a piece on this in January because I kept hearing it on these CHRO CLO calls that I was on, where they kept saying like, we feel like we've got to get Guild in place because we need our employees to know there is opportunity. There are programs they can go in. There are things that we value. There are places that
there are jobs they can develop. There are different roles. There are different things we want to do with you.
Yeah. So I think there are a couple different lanes, back to your original question of what is drawing employers to us. And it is definitely employer experience, is definitely ROI. It is definitely a more equitable. Some folks are saying, you know what, we already have some form of education benefit today, but we recognize it's not equitable. Can you just help us make it more equitable so we have a better employee experience?
Helping people figure out where to start.
Yeah. And then some folks are really focused on like, get us pathways. We need mobility in our organization. Help us figure out a pathway of both the jobs and the programs that we can get to people to make sure that they know they have an opportunity here for the future.
Okay. So that was the Matthew Daniel hot take, which, did you like the banner that I did? I mean,
I'm telling you,
that's like,
did you not
that's like on the fly. That's what you deal with when you deal with Christopher Lynch. You just boom, posting on the fly banners, flying all over the place, letting people know what's happening. But what I like about what you just said on this is a couple things. It's both encouraging and challenging in that the three things you brought up, these are things we can do, right? We can solve for making sure people have what they need to be able to survive and live. Like, that is something a company can do and say, you know what, we can tackle that. And like you said, we've made progress on that. And there's still opportunity, but that's something that we can do and say, you know what, that's not unreasonable. This isn't like pie in the sky, like, well, that's a little bit too pithy for me. Like, what? People want to be able to pay their bills, but we're working for, I mean, that's not unreasonable. Maslow said this a long time ago, type of a thing where it's like, okay, that's reasonable. A sense of belonging, I can get behind that purpose, feeling like it matters to be here and that I'm cared about by the organizations I work for. They're invested in me. I want to invest in them. Like, it's a mutual, not you owe me, not the other way around. Like, okay, I can work with that. And a sense of opportunity that it's like, this isn't it. So sit here till you're dead or retired. Like, nobody wants that. So I think those three things are all very, as I listen to that, I go, I mean, anybody listening should be encouraged that we can do that. Yeah. We can do that. I mean, these are things we can do.
Employers are making a decision. I spend a lot of my time right now with Walmart, and it's part of my role. I am a principal in our employer solutions group, but I specifically sit on our career mobility center of excellence, which means I get to work with employers deeply on both executing what Guild has to offer in mobility, but helping them think through the ways that they approach mobility. Yeah. And if you look at, there's this hashtag that their executives are using right now that's called a path for everyone, a path for everyone. And it shows up, there are just 20 folks that they brought in from like distributed, they call it their HOPE program, where they're bringing folks into corporate. 18 of those 20 are Live Better U grads, which is the way our programs are branded at Walmart. Or there's a CDL program that we deliver in partnership with their academies team. And so we are actually, those folks doubled their pay. They were working in warehouses and in stores. and they have seen over double their pay for the new roles that they're in. I think it's just really encouraging. And I think what is interesting, I'm going to read you a stat that I think is really powerful. Companies with low internal mobility have an average employee tenure of 2.9 years, while companies with high internal mobility have an average tenure of 5.4 years. So just being a company where people have opportunity nearly doubles the retention.
Nearly doubles retention.
Yeah. That matters.
Well, and the thing about it is, like I said, I think there's an encouraging lens and a challenging lens to that. All those three things, again, I would say the vast majority of people would say that's reasonable. And I would get behind trying to do more of that. I think, is there a handful of people that are the curmudgeons going, absolutely not, I don't want, okay, but they're the outliers, and forget that. But I would say the challenge with it that you hit on with this is, we have to break away from this idea of, and there's one size that fits for everybody. And you talked about that in terms of thinking about it more from a portfolio standpoint than a single solution. Because the reality is, what purpose, what opportunity looks like is different. And I've seen that where companies roll out benefits going, ta-da, we rolled out this benefit, everybody should be happy now, right? And it's like, well, I mean, like 20% of people are really happy, and the others 40 are like, nice in case I ever need it, and then the rest are like, I do not care one bit. And so this idea that, what's that one grand slam we can knock out of the park and then call it a day? That's the challenge of what we're dealing with. And this is a constantly changing, like my little, like, wavy thing there going. I mean, that it's a constant challenge. And I think you could take that and go, oh, we're never going to solve for it. But I think if anything, that should get us excited and say, hey, this is exciting because we're constantly going to be solving these problems and saying, all right, what does this look like? How can we do it differently? How can we reinvent and offer different things to different folks?
Yeah, you can come at it from a couple different directions. The two that stick out to me is, oh God, they're still not happy, right? And like, there's more.
And everybody's had that day.
Right.
Everybody's had that
all
day.
All of us do. The other side of this is like, and this is, we're coming close to time, I see up there. And so I'm going to say the thing that I normally say, which is, none of us got into learning or HR or talent because we thought to ourselves, let's go stand up a learning management system. That sounds like fun. Or an applicant tracking system, or I love XAPI. Like, nobody got into this field because we thought to ourselves, I love platforms. Nobody ever wanted to be the enforcer of terrible policies. No one ever wanted to be the person that had to walk in the room and sit with you while you laid somebody off. These are part of our jobs. These aren't the core of it. What we thought is, number one, we're going to do things better than the people who did them to me. Like, we've had experiences with HR, and some of them have been really bad. We've sat through really terrible courses, and we thought, I never want anybody to experience that again. I want to go make it better. I want to go give things to the lives of people. I want to contribute. And somewhere along the way, like, it gets sucked out of us. And we administer systems, and we make decisions, and we write learning objectives, and we lose that focus of what got us here. The other thing that we have, and I think this is a really important point of view, is we are solving, folks, like, retention and talent in organizations. It is not just something that L&D is talking about. It is what is on the headline news of NBC.
It's
ABC,
an executive, it's board meetings.
I
mean, these are board meetings. Talent committees are some of the #1 topics at company board meetings. What are you doing with your talent? What are you doing with your workforce? How are you developing this? But the thing I was going to say with this is, this goes back to the mobility piece, because going back to it, I'm going to challenge you on one point, because the thing is, I love my people that love XAPI and they love geeking out on some of this stuff, because it's like, that is really important. But here's the thing. It goes back to the mobility piece, where it's like, everybody had a deep passion and excitement for doing something. And then over time, it kind of starts to be like
a job.
And this is where the mobility piece is so key, because it's like, you know what? You need to recognize, I just think back to my K-12 days, where you had the teachers where it was like, I think you might need to stop being an 8th grade teacher, because I think you hate your life and it's wearing off on everyone type of a thing. And it's like, we all have those people, and it's like, they're not bad people.
No.
They aren't useless to the workforce. It's that they need opportunity for mobility to go, you know what? I see your skills and what you love doing and what gets you out of bed. I need you exercising that somewhere that doesn't feel like a grind anymore. And I think that's one of the things when we talk about opportunity can be a little uncomfortable for people, because it feels like, well, but my identity is making this one thing, this widget. And it's like, that's not your identity. Your identity is your ability to pay attention to the details or to execute the stuff.
That's it.
I need you to exercise that somewhere that makes you go, I'm excited for this.
Right.
I get to make a different widget.
And this is a moment where there is change happening around us.
Yes.
We cry out for the spotlight. We ask for the seat at the table. And guess what? Pony up, folks. The lights on, tap dance, or get off the stage, right? The moment is here. And so how will we take this opportunity and deliver goods? Instead of delivering performance objectives or XAPI statements or a course, how do we deliver experiences that make people want to stay? That's business impact. How do we deliver opportunities for new roles that take the talent? Listen to me, like, this is where I get super rev. If you want to know what dedication looks like, don't look at your white collar workforce. Look at the single mother who's 35 years old, who gets up, takes care of her kids, shows up to work, does her job every day, closes work down, goes home, bakes dinner, and then sits down at a computer and works on a bachelor's degree because she believes there's opportunity. There are folks on the front line that if we open doors, they're ready to go. We just have to open some doors.
I don't think
Come on now. Don't
right. And that's where the thing about that, though, is how does that not get you like wanting to jump out of your chair and go, this is what we can do? Like, this is where organizations are going back to your point of the spotlights on, the seats there. Organizations are recognizing that it's like, whoa, we've got this is the capability that actually has the power to do this. Are you willing to do it? And I think this is where it's like, break down the walls, break down what you think you knew, because we can change work. We can fundamentally change work and create opportunity. So
we can change work. We can change lives. We have an opportunity. This is the moment. We are solving some of the hardest problems in society right now. Let's do it.
All right. Well, I don't think we could end on a better note than that. I think both of us are about to jump out of my chair. People will be like, "Oh my gosh, he did stand up," type of a thing. So, and based on the comments coming in, I think we've gotten some other people excited as well. But the reality is, it's not just hype, and I think that's where I get hyped. And then I also come back and go, but this isn't just a joke. This isn't just like an inject you with an infusion of adrenaline to like run out, and then you get out the door and go like, whew, yeah, I don't really know that this is actually going to go anywhere. It's hard work, but it's meaningful, and it actually can be really impactful. So with that, now people have a better understanding of what Guild Education is. So when they're at the barbecue next and somebody goes, that Guild Education company, what is it? You can answer that question. We got the four. We know what it is. You got a chance to hear Matthew Daniels, see him in the flesh. Again, celebrity status. And it was always great catching up with you, Matthew. I always enjoy our conversations. I look forward to the next one. Love what you're doing. And hopefully, anybody who listens and watches this, regardless of what you're doing, be inspired by it, because there really is an opportunity for us to change our companies and people's lives. And if that doesn't get you excited about the work you do, I don't know what to tell you. There's probably, you might need some more help than this podcast is ever.
Or go find a new field. Quit dragging.
Or go find a new field. Right. Just like, Mr. or Mrs. whatever, 6th grade math teachers, like, I don't think you should be teaching this anymore or near children at all at this point. They're a danger to society. All right, Matthew. Well, thank you for the time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. I hope you have a wonderful week and that you got something from the conversation. We will see you next week, and it will be April then. So have a good one.